Okay, this is a story in case any of you are curious about me and what's going on. Just pure curiosity. There isn't really any reason why you have to know any of this. Um, I'm just like a random stranger from the internet, right? I'm going to be trying to draw maybe a little bit while doing this, but as you could tell from the previous video I made, I can't really draw and talk at the same time. And so I can end up talking for 3 hours straight and only have drawn a couple lines because it's difficult for me to draw and talk at the same time. So, a couple weeks ago, let's see here if I can bring up a calendar. Okay, Control N. So I forgot to do basically any prep work for this. I generally don't prep. Hold on. Okay, so it's going to be a Friday. And we're looking at July. Yeah, July 25th. Okay. My mom died. Okay. Something that happens quite often to people. Well, it happens once per person, but it happens to most people, especially in the 21st century. And what she died of was rectal cancer that spread to her liver. And the rectal cancer managed to kill enough tissue in her liver to cause it to no longer catalyze the chemical reactions that are catalyzed in the liver to enough extent to prevent her blood from being toxic. And of course that causes damage to every single organ in the body because that's what blood supplies. Blood supplies nutrients and oxygen to everywhere in your body. And so it kills you, it makes you die in a way it's like everything kind of crumbles down and fails at once. Whereas this big, catastrophic, dramatic, just blah, right? And she was born, I don't want to, just for privacy reasons, I don't want to say the day and the month, but she was born earlier than the date of her death, in the year 1957, which would mean that she was 68 years old when she died. And I'm someone who is younger than you may think I would be for having a mother who's 68 years old, because she was older than you would think she would be when I was born on average. I don't want to say exactly what my age is, but it's younger than you would think it would be if my mom was 68. And 68 years old is a pretty long life when considering the totality of human history. But in the 21st century, in the era in which I live, it's pretty short. And so most of us kind of living in the same epoch, whatever word you want to use. Epoch probably has a technical definition. It's probably technically a certain number of years. I don't remember what it is. Anyway, live in this age, right, would expect to live longer than that. In this age specifically. So, in the context in which I live, that's pretty young. And I would be pretty young for someone whose mom would die, right? Now, in the past few, ever since, I don't know, October of 2024 of last year, in the past few months or so, my parents have moved in with me. It's sort of like they moved back to their old house, right? And so all this went down, sometimes not literally in front of me. She didn't literally die in front of me. She died in front of my dad and my older sister. Literally in front of them. They were touching her at the time. So they're trying to change her diaper, and it's so they were like grabbing her and touching her literally at the time it happened. It was very so, which makes it very dramatic. I just happened to not be there at the time. I was at a church function. I was somewhere else. But some of the process of this did happen right in front of me. It's not like your parents dying, but they kind of live somewhere else, right? And you visited them every once in a while. Then you get word one day that they're dead. It's not like that, right? It was like very personal how this happened. And originally she had a mass. The source of this was a cancer or a mass in her rectum. Now, I didn't really understand this. I went through a lot of my life not actually understanding this. But it appears that most of the drying out of your stool that happens in the rectum, in the very last piece of the colon. It's not like as gradual process throughout the colon as I thought. Like I would have thought earlier in my life that, the last third of the colon, you're already pretty hard by then and it's pushing through very viscously through that last bit. No, it's pretty liquidy almost all the way until the very end. So if your rectum doesn't do as your rectum should, you end up with continuous diarrhea. And all your stool comes out all liquidy. And I don't know if this is something unique to my mother, or this is like a side effect of this too that would happen to anybody if they had a cancerous mass in their rectum. But she also had a hard time keeping her sphincter closed and keeping the liquidy stool in. So, and every time she had to release gas, well, there was liquid there because, her stool was always liquid. And so basically all her farts were wet. But she had a hard time holding it, basically. So she was always kind of leaking a little. Michael, well, this is really gory details. So I was kind of see but you'll see kind of the theme of what I'm kind of getting at the end here, right? And the doctors, of course, were trying to figure out what was going on here. And it would seem kind of obvious in hindsight, if your rectum is not doing what the rectum should be doing, then there's something specifically wrong with your rectum. But she had a colonoscopy back in August of last year, about a year before I'm recording this, and they found polyps in her colon, and they snipped them in this colonoscopy. They actually did something, but they didn't see a mass specifically in the colon, in the rectum. And I'm going to kind of go crazy with the drawing here, and I'll undo it. It might be because, so it's consider this like the lumen. The lumen is like the opening of the rectum. The mass actually wasn't like an obstructing thing like this. It was kind of like this, where kind of it was concave, and it kind of conformed to the surface. And of course, we later learned that it actually had extended beyond the wall. So it might have been kind of doing this number. Forgot to use the pen, right? Where it was actually extending outside the wall of the colon as well as kind of being inside, conforming to the shape of the opening. So because the way it was structured, it may have been difficult to see, especially when it was young and small during that colonoscopy. But her rectum was already poorly functioning. She was already having symptoms of what was going on at the time. Okay, mirrored. That's funny. Even though I'm selecting layer number 3. I guess I have a mirror thing on layer number 3. I forgot about that. So they missed it. And so it sort of, because that was on record, right, it sent her primary care physician somewhat off track, trying to figure out what was going on. So anyway, it was this big mass in the rectum that was causing the rectum to not function properly. And the mass was in such a way that it's really weird. There's a lot of kind of oddly behaving cells kind of surrounding cancer cells. And so they once took a biopsy of the mass and found that these cells are weird, but they're not explicitly cancerous, and all kinds of strange things. Um, but anyway, that's something that was going on, right? Is her butt wasn't working as a butt should for a very long time. And then once we figured out that the cancer had spread to her liver, it was like just the knowledge of that brought on worse symptoms. And she started becoming, like, her throat started to become so clogged with mucus all the time that it became difficult to talk and very difficult to say eat and drink. It became difficult it was easier to eat and drink things that didn't have chunks in them, right? So you could say they're smoother and that had low viscosity. But like she could eat stuff like ice cream that wasn't very thick, like Tillamook style ice cream. If you ever heard of like Tillamook ice cream, it would be kind of a good kind of ice cream for her to eat. It's not necessarily my favorite. I like thicker ice cream, like Humboldt ice cream would be something that I'm into. But for someone his throat's so clogged, it would be more difficult to eat something like that, right? But she got to the point where it was difficult for her to even drink water. And so she started becoming very malnourished, losing a lot of weight really fast. I presume if you had cancer, if you had a tumor, then that would cause you to lose weight very fast just in itself because cancers are very energy hungry. But she just wasn't eating enough and wasn't drinking enough water, so she's getting very dehydrated and very malnourished and just losing weight and decreasing and decreasing. And for whatever combination of reasons, whether it was the chemotherapy or that combined with just her liver failing, or that combined with just not eating and drinking enough, she started becoming very, very weak. So she lost her ability to walk, and then she eventually lost the ability to even, say, turn over in the bed by herself. So I remember trying to help my mom get into a car, for example. She could not lift her feet up and say put them in the car, and this would be like a low car, like a sedan, which isn't really the most ideal for this. But we don't have cars that are most ideal for this. So, and she couldn't pick up her feet and put them on the floor of the car, right, to get in the car. So, what I would do is I'd try to grab her foot and pick it up and put it in the car for her. And when I would do something like this, I would feel no resistance on the foot. So if you were to do something like me try to give you my foot and you pick up my foot and put it in its place, it would be kind of an effortless thing. There would be a lot of resistance that you would feel on my foot because my body doesn't naturally want to be controlled by someone else. And I tend to tense up involuntarily. And maybe my mom is slightly less like this, right? It's easier for her to give you her foot. But it still felt weird to me. And was a way of feeling how weak she was getting. And eventually, she lost the ability to climb stairs, right, as part of her ability to losing the ability to walk. And the way our house is laid out, the master bedroom, the bedroom that she would sleep at, and where her bed was, is upstairs. And that's pretty common. It's not the best, but it's a pretty common situation to be in. And so when she lost the ability to climb those stairs, it's kind of happened kind of suddenly, and there was a panic. And my dad was going to put the bed downstairs and so on. We managed to get, by coincidence, at the same time, the oncologist said we can't do any more treatments because she's too weak. And we immediately managed to get her signed up for hospice. They managed to bring a bed in that we could just put on the first floor without moving the bed down. But that bed was so squishy. It had like a squishy, it kind of sunk into it enough and made it hard for her to kind of move in it. And I'm not a very strong person, nor am I real versed in the intuition of how to move people. And so, I could try to help her like roll from her back to one side or back to the other side and so on. But the bed was so squishy and she would sink into it so much. And I didn't really have a good intuition about how to move people around. And I'm not very strong generally. It was very difficult for me to do that. Anyway, so she couldn't turn over in the bed. And you might kind of understand, like, you're like, why is he telling her these really gruesome stuff? I'll try to like say what point I'm trying to make in the end. But she also had a lot of fluid build up in her legs. And this was partly due perhaps to the cancer, or it's a symptom of the cancer, or partly due to malnutrition. You get a bunch of like edema in your feet, and that might make it part of the reason why it was so hard for her to walk. But also, it would sometimes actually, the tissue fluid would leak out of her legs, and so give off the tissue fluid smell. So, when people die, everything is embarrassing, right? It's not your fault, right? If I was in the same situation my mom was in, I would realize that this is not my fault that this is happening to me. This is just what happens to everybody. But I would still be like super embarrassed. And even if it's not cancer that kills us, we all seem to go out deaf. Yeah, she ended up losing her ability to hear, which is crazy, and the ability to speak, and she got like confused about the time. Like she didn't know what time of day it was, and so on. Like losing her eyesight, deaf, can't speak, can't think, confused in constant confusion, can't move. Basically alone because of the lack of the ability to communicate. Have to rely on everyone for everything. Can't eat, and stinky. And we go out in this massive, a bunch of pee and blood and sometimes puke. And I haven't really seen a whole lot of that in my life because I'm relatively young, right? It's the first time I kind of saw something like that. But that's how it goes. And throughout this process, right, sometimes I felt like an unhelpful, like useless idiot, right? Because I'd be like, would you like help getting out of the car? It's like, do I grab your hand? And like, she wouldn't like let me help her or grab my hand or whatever. And sometimes it's hard to like figure out how to help someone stand up or something, especially if you don't have specialized training in that. You're afraid that you can accidentally move them the wrong way and tunk them over as opposed to actually helping them walk. And I had and as a result, I had a lot of like fear and intimidation. A very hard time helping my mom in the last few weeks of her life, and a lot of embarrassment as a result of that. This sounds like a vent, doesn't it? And that's part of the reason why, recently I signed up for a course in being an EMT, because then at least, some means maybe, I can learn a little bit more about how to actually be helpful to people who are in situations where they need help, right? And not be in a place where it's always just like standing there awkwardly, and so on. Okay, so I'll talk about me a bit here. and what's actually been going on with me. Um, for like certain specific reasons, I never like talk about what kind of engineer I was, but I was an engineer. I have a master's degree in a certain kind of engineering. Again, it's like privacy reasons, right? I don't say like specifically which engineering discipline, but it was a type of engineering. It was a type of engineering where yeah, I should avoid the specifics, but if you read the job postings for companies that want this kind of engineer, you'll tend to learn that maybe not explicitly, but even to get like the kind of experience they want, you essentially have to have a PhD in this field. And I don't have a PhD in it. I have a master's merely, and it's a non-thesis master's. So I have a non-thesis master's in some sort of engineering, and I also have a bachelor's in physics because I just like physics. Um, and I was relatively blessed or lucky, depending on how you think about it. I'll say blessed. I managed to get a job relatively quickly after graduating with my master's degree. As the same kind of engineer that I got my degree in, right? It's kind of like the ideal situation. And the job was kind of okay. I didn't really like it, but, I didn't like it like that much, but I didn't hate it enough I would quit, so it did its job. And I got paid rather well for someone fresh out of college. The pay was pretty good. In context, right? Someone with more experience, you'd expect more, but it was pretty good for what I was, right? A lot of other postings were worse, so it was on the good side of the pay. And I got raises that were pretty generous over time as I worked there. I worked there for a few years until the project I was working on, right, the funding got cut and they didn't have enough money to pay me, and so they laid me off. And after I got laid off, I spent a bit of time, looking for another engineering job. Not really too hard or too serious, but I applied to some places, right? And I got one interview on a job in a really bad place to be. It was in Massachusetts. It was somewhere like, it's not in Massachusetts. It was like somewhere near Detroit, Michigan. It was with the army up there. And it was a low entry level job for someone who had a few years of experience. That was just the interview. I didn't pass the interview. I didn't get an offer, right? And there was a bunch of there was no other even interviews that I got, right? It was just a mess, right? And the reason why I wasn't really all that serious and applying to as many places as I theoretically could have was because my heart really wasn't in it anymore. And this happened about back in August to me. And at this point, I decided, I want to go to med school. So I decided, well, to get into med school, you need clinical experience. And there's different, like if you go to like a 4-year university, right, the academic advising and stuff can help you. When you're doing pre-med, it can help you figure out how to get this. Oftentimes, you just, job shadow a doctor. That's how job shadowing a doctor is how you get the clinical experience. But I decided, I get my blood drawn a lot because I get monitored to see if, like, I'm in cancer remission. So it was also colon cancer. Colon cancer runs in my family, although it's not actually clear like what gene's responsible because we don't have any like specific bad genes you could identify necessarily. So it's kind of mysterious how it's happening as far as databases are concerned, but it appears to be the case. So I get my blood work done a lot. So I kind of experience with that. It's something that's kind of close to me, and my mom's a really hard stick, right? So I have like a fascination with hitting hard sticks. Me personally am not a hard stick at all. I have big bulgy veins in my ACFs, but my mom is. And how that worked out, of course, is I have a dad, and my dad also has big bulgy veins in his ACFs. So, I decided I want to get a phlebotomy certification. And that's also, one of the quicker certifications to get in the where I live. Where I live is California. I was gonna say for privacy reasons I don't want to say which state exactly, but I think I've explicitly said that before. So I mean, why don't I just say it again? I live in California. Not and California has the most strict phlebotomy license requirements, but there's some other nearby states that I think also adapt California's requirements. So it's not just California. Anyway, even in California, though, getting a phlebotomy license is the quickest license to get for clinical practice. So I went and got one. And then, of course, only 12% or so of those that get the license, though, manage to actually get a job as a phlebotomist. And that's probably because the license is sufficiently easy to get. There's just more people trying to get the job than there are jobs to get. And you would find that odd because a lot of people spread this rumor that phlebotomists are in demand. So I don't know how it's going on. Maybe they're just not in demand. Maybe that's just wrong. I mean, they need more of them, but maybe they just don't have the money to pay them. So, but I started off with that. And the reason why I wanted to get a job to get my clinical experience instead of doing a volunteer situation or just simply job shadow a doctor, although I could job shadow a doctor as well, just to double up, right? Is that if I have a job, well, let's say I apply for med school, I apply to a whole bunch of different med schools, and I just get rejected from all of them. Now what? I could go try to get an engineering job again, but I'll have this big gap I'll have to explain. And it's these years trying to get into med school, and I plan to apply to med school in the spring of 2027. I would like to have something I'm doing to fall back on, so at least have some income, right? So at least have some job, and getting my clinical experience with the job kills two birds with one stone. And what if my relationship with my dad falls through? Well, I need to have some way to pay for my med school. And I want to be able to move out if need be. I need to have some means of either paying rent or paying a mortgage. I'd rather pay a mortgage because the money's actually going into something. It's not like a rent where you're flushing money down a black hole. But in order to start the mortgage, you have to have enough for the down payment, and more down payment, less interest, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, beggars can't always be choosers on these things. I'd like the ability to have some income coming in, so then I'm comfortable moving out if I need to move out, right? And also, I'm someone who would like to date somebody, right? I'm a single guy who wants to become unsingle. And it's difficult to start a relationship potentially if I don't currently have a job. Although it would have to be for the condition that I plan on going to med school at some point. I won't be able to work as much when I do that. And there's also the social issue where, sometimes you might be at the church or something, and people are trying to start a conversation with you, but they're not really very creative, right? So they ask you the generic question, well, what do you do for work? And if you're not doing something, you're just saying, well, I'm taking these classes and so on, trying to clear my prereqs for med school, and that's just what I'm working on. It's kind of embarrassing, right? You'd like to be able to say, well, I'm a phlebotomist, or I'm an EMT, or something like that. Anyway, I finally finished my phlebotomy license. It took a while. It took until about March of this year to finally get that license. And I've been applying to several jobs, right, as much as I can find, but I'm not getting any response. I'm not even getting a nibble. I'm getting these rejections that are reflexive, right? I'm just getting kicked back in the face trying to get a job as a phlebotomist. So I decided, well, may not necessarily be a good idea to get a job, may not necessarily get a job as an EMT instead. However, that's the second quickest license to get. And the more licenses I have, the better it will look trying to get at least one of the things. And the more different kinds of jobs I can apply to, the more higher chance that I'll get at least one of them. So I now go well, it's time to do an EMT course now. So I'm going to start trying to do that license while simultaneously trying to get a phlebotomy job. And yeah, that's what I'm working on, is trying to get into medical school. And a lot of people try to like ask me why this is the case. It's really hard to explain. Like, it'd be much easier, especially if you're trying to like date somebody, you're trying to get married. Although there's no real person I'm dating right now, I don't know how I'm going to pick somebody up. Gonna be a struggle. I gotta do something to try real hard at that pretty soon. Um, it would be easy. It's just to try as hard as you can to continue to be an engineer. Um, and I'll try to roundabout kind of go into this, and I don't actually, in the end, you'll actually find, I'll put my main point up front, I don't really have a good justification for it. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with the literature wisdom of the Bible, and you're familiar with Ecclesiastes. So Ecclesiastes is a lecture given by somebody. We don't really know who exactly. According to Jewish tradition, it was Solomon, and there is some language at one part of the book that suggests that it is Solomon. It's not completely arbitrary. It's not a completely like arbitrary attribution. Well, I'm following the rough really well, but I don't want to exactly. I want to be more convex. A rough see if I can clean this up. Anyway, it might be him. It would make sense. There's the context clues to make sense. And the whole point of this is basically saying he tried doing all the things that humans tend to do in life for their personal achievement, right? The things they do to try to, continue after their death, right? He has to like be really wise and build big building projects and gain a bunch of wealth and study a bunch of stuff and do all these things that people do with their time to occupy themselves and try to be significant and try to leave the biggest scar on the world they can afterwards when they leave. And then he makes a bunch of arguments about how pointless these things are and why. It's like you pass on your stuff to the next generation, and the next generation is going to do what it wants with it and not necessarily respect it, right? They'll go back and deface your monuments and so on. And it's kind of a lot of these are kind of like worldly arguments for the pointlessness of things. But the lecturer or the teacher who wrote this little lecture is generally correct, right? Like no one really even it's kind of accepted nowadays. The 21st century, there's a reason why we don't do things like build the Great Pyramid of Khufu again, right? Because we've been able to identify with the collection of experience that we've accumulated in the entire human race over the millennia, that's kind of silly, right? The reason why we don't do that kind of stuff is not because what the conspiracy theorists say, and it's like we couldn't even do it with our own technology. We could make something like that again. We know how to do it. We just think it's stupid. Okay? Now, different people have different responses to this conundrum that a lot of the things people do to try to be significant, they're all really pointless, right? Some people become religious, and I'll describe that later when I talk about Paul, right? That is, but we can of course quote the very well-known saying of Jesus, do not build up for yourselves treasures on earth where moths and rust destroy and thieves break in and steal. Build up for yourself treasures in heaven where moths and rust do not destroy and thieves do not break in and steal. Man, making the eraser mirror would be so helpful. And that is, we can't really do anything to make us significant materialistically. All the materialistic projects we have tend to be pointless, but we might be able to make something that has a point in the next life. Another response to this is it's kind of almost, this is not exactly what Buddhism is, but it's very kind of, a lot of like sages, well, earthly wisdom sages have expressed over the years, and even into the modern day, and that is just try not to think about it and try not to do things like that. Try not to be significant, accept the fact that you're insignificant, and just enjoy the pleasures of the moment. Right? Some people would call this like mindfulness. That's the way you kind of go about it. Right? Just be like, this ice cream tastes good. This lasagna tastes good. It's a really nice day outside. My wife is so lovely. My kids, so on. It's like, these things, it's good. Everything's just good. You don't need to do big projects and build up a bunch of significance and make your life like permanent and have meaning and purpose and whatever nonsense, right? Some people just ignore that it's insignificant, that everything is pointless, and just do it anyway because they can't think of anything else to do. So they just kind of work real hard anyway because they're just like, well, this is just what I do, and if it turns out to be pointless, so be it. It's the third thing people do. And the fourth thing that can happen is you can get depressed, right? Because everything is pointless, then I just don't do anything. Which is also pretty common as well. Where I tend to, somewhere where although I am religious, I'm not necessarily like not depressed. Right. I'm not like clinically depressed or diagnosed with it, but I have kind of like depressive tendencies. I tend to think in ways that depressed people tend to think. So what solution would I have to kind of the Ecclesiastes problem? I mean, the lecturer doesn't really give a solution to his own problem. He says to obey God's commands, for that is the full duty of man, and that basically is saying you don't have really a duty to do something significant, right, because it's all pointless anyway. But to the audience he was speaking, right, well, obeying God would be a given, right? So the point is not obey God. The point is there's just nothing you really have to do beyond that. Which, to someone like me, doesn't really give an answer because it doesn't actually specify what obeying God would look like to me. It might to the audience he's speaking to, but doesn't necessarily to me. And so to answer the Ecclesiastes problem, I have to go to Paul, right? I have to have Paul, saying like, talking about him running the race to win the prize, right? And the reason why he's still alive and the reason why he works, right, is for rewards in heaven. We don't necessarily understand how these rewards work. It's kind of a theologically problematic thing. But if Paul said they're there, they're probably there. For the work he's done to build the church, right? And you can say, okay, that's what obeying God is adding structurally sound elements, metaphorically, to the church. It's a metaphor, of course. The church is not like a physical building. But metaphorically, add stone to the church of God, right? This is what we do. And it might seem, and the point is in a realm unseen. It's in a kingdom not of this world that is being built. So, but it sometimes is difficult, still, when you go through life, where the job you're doing to get paid, it's really hard to understand why doing what you're doing even matters. And I tend to have that problem when it comes to engineering. I have these specific, things that my ethics and my religion command me to do, and that, of course, is help the sick, help the poor, help those that need it. And it would be much easier for me to justify what I'm doing if somehow I can combine my job with something that also does that. Um, it's not necessary. Paul made tents, okay? Paul is not remembered. He also had like another job before that. He was a Pharisee. But if you can call that a job, right? He was someone who would like teach the Bible. But that's how he would fund his mission, right? Missions. And we don't remember Paul, this is very important, millennia later for how well of a tent maker he was and how good his tents were. We don't really know. They could be terrible tents. We don't know, right? We remember him from spreading spreading Christianity throughout the Roman Empire. That's what we remember Paul for. You don't have to be a doctor, right, to be a Christian. It's okay. But to me, it just seems like it would be so much easier. And this is a problem I tend to see in the church sometimes, the individuals. Sometimes, I know some people are explicitly not like this, but some people it seems to be like this, where they'll get a job doing something, and I can end up with this problem too. And you ask them kind of like, well, how is your life different from anybody else in the world, and how on a day-to-day basis are you living for Jesus? And they might say something that might be kind of mealy-mouthed, but might just kind of come down to, in the end, I just do my job that I do really well. Right? I really serve my employer really well. Well, even the pagans do that. I mean, if you do something to get paid to do well, that's something that people do for selfish reasons a lot too. That's not what building the church is. Because as I said, Paul is not remembered for his tent making millennia later. Paul is remembered for spreading Christianity throughout Rome. So, when you say trying to choose your work, you kind of based on whatever good stuff you want to do, doing your work, you can make it actually easier for yourself to fall into that trap, perhaps. So you can kind of distract yourself. There's pitfalls, but maybe you can kind of and this is kind of why the reasons why doing the things I'm doing aren't so good. But maybe that can give you some understanding. Just being an engineer feels like I'm not really doing good stuff, right? I'm not doing the stuff I should be doing and have potential of doing that could actually have a tangible way of helping people. I'm sort of wasting myself doing it, even if I had skills and even if I was relatively good at it at the time. But that's not everything, right? It's not about necessarily, it's kind of a bad answer because it's not necessarily making your work more align with what you think is good or to do or not, so much as it is what your purpose in life is just actually not even your work. In a little over a week from now, we're going to have a funeral for my mother. At that, my church likes to call it a memorial service. They don't like to use the word funeral because my church likes to use different words for things we already have words for. They don't like to call Sunday school, they call it Sunday seminar. They haven't had a different word for a sermon besides sermon yet, but oh man, that's next. I mean, I don't know why you can't just call things what we call things. anyway. And part of this is going to be me going up there on the stage, this funeral, that they're not calling a funeral, is going to be me going up on stage and talking about my mom specifically a little bit. I have to talk, when you speak at a funeral, you're supposed to speak about the person who died, right? You're not supposed to speak about general things. And for me, this is going to be very difficult to do because I don't really have much to say about my mom, specifically, right? And that's just it. I just don't really have a lot to say about my mom. I have something to say about maybe her older brother who died back in 2017. And I have some stuff to say about maybe how, what, me observing like the last bits of my mom's life, like how I think of that and how maybe that affects my mentality. Um, which is not really the best because it's kind of about me instead of my mother, and it focuses really primarily on like the end of her life and not like the whole of her life that I've experienced. Um, so giving a speech is going to be tough. I don't want to not speak though because I don't want my dad to go up there and speak, and then my sister go up there and speak, and then me just not speak, and that's fine. It's not like that makes me less than them. You don't have to. You don't. What it does is it makes it so that maybe how they think of me that like attend this funeral is all they get to know about how like I think of this stuff, this situation. My mom just dying and everything is an interpolation from what them two think, right? It's like I don't have a piece that shows me as a separate person. It's a problem, right? Um, and so it makes me want to go up there and give my specific word as well. So you can see kind of how different I am. Not necessarily better I am, but see how for me it's different, right? So they don't have to rely on characterizing me based on the testimony of others that are different than me. And those two people are significantly different in personality and way of thinking than I am. So I'm going to try to think of something to speak about there. But it's not going to be easy. So wish me luck. Uh, it's a bit of a struggle speaking at my mom's funeral. And it's kind of easy to tell, like me just kind of like free form talking into the mic here, that I'm not a very good speaker, right? I like everything's all jumbled up, and I'll go off on a tangent until to somehow reel myself back in, and not figuring out how to reel myself back in, not figuring out which order to put the thoughts in because I don't think of thoughts in a linear fashion. I think of how everything relates to everything else in this complicated web. And so I'll go through the topics in this meandering, disorganized fashion. And because I'll have a bunch of decisions I have to reach about which topic to go through next at each point in this meander, I'll like pause awkwardly. It is better if I like have a set of bullets to maybe tell me the order of things and how the segues go. But I have another problem where even if I write a semi-script, writing it like a word for word script is almost never a good idea because it's really awkward sounding when you're like reading something. But like a flowchart kind of script, just to like get the order of things written down so you're just not meandering through things, can be somewhat helpful. But the problem I was going to say is that I tend to like end up not sticking to it. It's just a thing I do. Like I'll just like improv on a bullet, and by doing so, I'll like say something about something 2 bullets down, and things just get all scrambled up. So the answer might just be write your bullets and stick to your bullets, and not scramble yourself up too much. Like you see me doing here, right? Scrambling myself up. Um, and yeah. So this is going to sound kind of callous, but this kind of wraps everything up here. Um, Being somewhat callous, though, in the way it's wrapping things up. Um, my when my parents moved back in, I started recording Let's Plays and stuff I'm doing on this YouTube channel, less because I'm someone who's embarrassed to record me playing video games in front of my parents. I just really don't like doing that, right? So I would wait for opportunities where maybe, they'd go shopping together or something. Um, so like, I could then just record something and then they'd stop when they get back, right? I still record every once in a while, but I record things much less frequently, and so that's why, stuff got uploaded to my YouTube channel less frequently. Now, primarily my mom would be at home most of the time. My dad has a day job. He's also an engineer. He goes to work. And he moved back in. He found another job here, and so he actually goes to work now. And I wouldn't record myself playing video games in front of my mom. I just had to put up in front of my mom like a bigger, more, serious image, generally. I did it once a long time ago, but that was a long time ago. I wouldn't do it recently. So, it was actually an episode of Control, if you were curious. One of those episodes was recorded in front of my mother. Now you know. Now that she died, my parents aren't home a lot, actually, and so, because my sister does some stuff with her friends often, she's kind of a deadbeat, like a literal deadbeat. I'm not making like a VTuber reference. She's a literal deadbeat before that term got appropriated by Hololive. But but she kind of like goes and does some projects with a group of friends she does some like home improvement stuff usually, and helping people move and that kind of thing. I have the house to myself a lot more than I used to, and so I might have an opportunity to do a lot more recording. Don't really expect too much though, because I'm also trying to get an EMT license. I'm taking classes, I'm taking my organic chemistry and my biochemistry and stuff, trying to check off my prerequisites for medical school. I might jump in and job shadow a doctor at some point. I have, other hobbies besides recording video games. I like to play bassoon. Sometimes I go on vacations where I go hike and stuff. So this is kind of a low priority for me still. And so I'm not suddenly going to take off and suddenly be recording a lot of video games again, like I used to. But one hindrance is no longer there. It sounds callous because it sounds super odd and opportunistic, right? I will say rather my mom not die than she die. Especially not in the horrible way she did, right? Just don't take it like that. But as far as that is some of the YouTube channel news, that there might be a little bit more frequent things, maybe, I don't know. Anyway, I didn't draw anything, I just drew 2 lines. So now we're recording, I drew 2 lines, which is okay. The primary purpose of this was not to be a drawing thing. I gotta rotate it again. The purpose of this was just to rant into the internet. That was the whole point of this. And maybe you were curious about what's going on or whatever. So it's fine that I only do 2 lines. But I only drew 2 lines. Not that this would be the final, it's not like this, finally be cut up and turned into a model that I'm drawing anyway. Because a 2D model is going to include a whole body, right? And this would just be a headshot, the way the canvas is set up. So I have to redraw everything again anyway. This doesn't really have much of a point. But I think I'm sort of done talking. I'll draw things for a few more minutes, and I won't talk so that I can get some stuff drawn. And then after I'm done with that, I'll stop recording. if I think of something I really want to say randomly in the middle of this, I'll say it. Okay. So we're going to select. Sorry, zoom back in. Turn it off. Grab my pen. Oh, this is an awkward line. I'll just do it over and over again until I get it correct. Okay, there we go. And then let's do a hairline here. Why can't I not get shaky hand? The problem I have with phlebotomy too is I didn't have shaky hand. It's probably a good thing because I don't try to play string instruments. Like I don't try to play violin because I'd have shaky problems if I tried to play violin. I play wind instruments and those are less sensitive to being shaky. I get shaky bows so bad if I was a violinist. Yeah, that's why I can never really be an artist, like doing like this Eastern style cartoon art and art for like V2 models and stuff because I can't make the line art clean enough because I don't have it. My hand's not steady enough to do long enough strokes without it waving. All right. Maybe zooming out really far could help me. I don't know. So they make the long strokes short. No, I don't want to. I maybe want to just go more straight. Yeah. Now, when I draw, typically, when I use like, pencil on paper, it tends to involve a lot of blurring out the graphite with my finger and stuff, and a lot of like using an eraser, and a lot of like impressionistic things. And I can iterate on it, I can get things good in the end. It's a little bit easier because there's more friction. If there's a bit of friction between my nib and my graphic tablet, but there isn't just it would hopefully shows like a little bit more to help kind of control things. My Wacom tablet is just a little bit too slippery for my taste. And maybe using a different kind of nib might help. They might have higher friction nibs. I'm not sure. You do have to worry out with like higher friction things, it like wearing down your like the surface of your tablet. The whole idea of a nib is that it wears down, so your tablet doesn't. Um, yeah. Very funny comment. I have the Wacom. I think it's like a 550 tablet or something. It's kind of old now, but it still works really well. Um, I saw the box that my tablet came in on the shelf in the background of Martins Lisi's is face cam when he was like on a little interview podcast with Brian Shaw regarding an upcoming arm wrestling match he's going to be doing. Like, oh, okay, I guess Martins Lisi's has a similar graphic tablet than I do. And it's similar enough that it would come in the same style packaging. If as long as unless maybe he doesn't still have it, he just has the box. I don't know. Yeah, it could sell for nothing less than the big one, right? This is like the biggest one they had. It's a monitor style. It doesn't have the screen. It's not a Cintiq because those are expensive, and I don't know if I would want like I didn't think I needed it, but it's like the biggest fanciest one they had that's like not a monitor. Makes it easier to draw things, maybe. You actually sometimes you can play video games with this. Like, what is it? Um, there was a game in the Paraka animations. It was the Avok shooting game that was easier to do with a graphic tablet than with anything else. like mouse or touchpad or anything. You do it. You use it with graphic tablet. It takes a while to get used to it because unlike a mouse, right, you can't reset the position. It's absolute position. There's like a one-to-one and onto mapping between each point on the tablet and each point on the screen, right? It really throws you off when you first try to use a graphics tablet. But it's worth it because then you can draw digital art if you feel like it. And another use I had for this, which was really nice, is I didn't have to buy an iPad. So I was being a tutor for my university. They had my department that got my major in, my primary major. They had a tutoring center, and I was one of the tutors because I was one of those people that's really good at things. And people would walk in and they would get like in-person tutoring from you on all the courses, including the upper division ones. Well, COVID hit and they shut all the in-person stuff down, but they wanted to keep the tutoring center going. So I was, trying to help people with their homework over Zoom call. So I needed some sort of thing to, draw the math with in this process. And a lot of people at the time, they moved on to like Apple stuff, like they had iPads and so on. But I didn't need one of those. I didn't have one, but it was fine because I had Clip Studio and a graphic tablet. So my dad also bought me my graphic tablet. That's another thing. This is my justification for saying that he did get his money's worth out of it. Because this was used more for doing that than it was used for actually drawing. And after I graduated, I decided that this was kind of fun and wanted to still keep doing it. And there were several specific topics that when you're in the tutoring center and you're tutoring in, that you end up explaining a lot or pretty often. And so I made this YouTube channel I called Sked Math, SCEDMATH. And I thought what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of upload lectures on those kinds of things at first. Just to kind of put all the stuff I learned about how to teach this stuff out on the internet. And the project kind of fell through. I mean, it doesn't necessarily fall through. I still could pick it up again and do it. But for some reason, even though I had all this gumption going into doing it, I lost interest in it really quickly. And so Sked Math has videos that are posted a long time ago that are don't get through everything I wanted to get through, and the channel's been inactive for a long time. Nothing prevents me from logging in again and posting something again. I just haven't because it's I'd rather play video games. I didn't even get to the topics I even wanted to get to. I decided first to try to go through the circuits, which is something, it's a lower division class for EE students and it's upper division for mechanical students usually. Both of them have to learn it, the basic analog circuits. And I didn't even get through the whole thing. I was doing it as a test run before I got to more advanced topics, right? I just go through the whole topic of analog circuits. I didn't get through it. It stops after superposition. And that's even a non-traditional order of teaching it. Oftentimes you'll teach Thevenin and Norton equivalent circuits before you start teaching superposition. I just think that's dumb. I think you should teach superposition first. Anyway, I didn't get to the higher topics. And eventually, I wanted to actually get good at quantum field theories, electroweak and stuff like that. But quantum electrodynamics primarily, because you can do a whole lot with quantum electrodynamics. Actually doing calculations with the theory. As well as, and completely different note, general relativity. And then post how I best understood that on the internet, right? And I haven't really been able to find time to really get good at those things. I took a class, it was 2 quarters long. There's 3 quarters in a year. It's kind of like trimesters. If you're not familiar with colleges on a quarter system, it's kind of like trimesters in high school. It's like 2 trimesters long. Sequence of graduate level general relativity when I was like in grad school. And that was fine, but I didn't really learn it very well. I got an A minus, I think, in one of the 2 quarters. So, which means I didn't learn it very well, especially in a grad class. Grad classes A minus is actually not that good. Um, I think I got an A in the, I got like 1A and 1A minus or something like that. Um, and so, I bought a copy of Misner, Thorne, and Wheeler and intended to read the book and work through all of the problems in it. But I'm still like in the differential forms, like the exterior calculus section. I haven't even gotten to like the general relativity part, and actually in stuff that you'd learn in a special relativity course. I'm still doing the special section. So I've like not even close to really getting anywhere I want with that, let alone teaching it to others. And of course, we can all dream, right? If any specific person, we don't know who, could by happen chance be the one that if they get a good conceptual understanding of um, of both particle physics and gravity, that they could come up with a new theory of everything. I mean, there's a lot of theories of everything out there, right? But none of them are really above a lot of types of criticism. They wouldn't have any of the problems our current theories of everything have, right? They like a novel theory of everything that just was like just locks in, just slots right in. This is it. If they can get good like visualization and conceptual understanding of these things, they can actually finish a good theory of everything. And I once thought I was smart and like, well, why not? Why not learn these things if I wouldn't miss out on an opportunity, right? But I was still way behind on that. I'm doing gravity first because that's what I thought would be easier. Before I jump into, quantum stuff. And of course, I took a course in college as well. It was actually an undergrad course that got like started going into quantum electrodynamics. At least it was like an extension of the nominal quantum mechanics series is for the physics majors, upper division. And man, I didn't learn it very well from that either. Like I take the course, I got an A in that one, and it's just like, why do I have an A? I don't remember anything from this. I don't understand any of it. It was a mess. All right, so it's like I've taken the classes, but I don't feel like I really know any of the stuff. It's not like the same way where you take like a class in thermodynamics and you don't get it. It's like a different kind of don't get it, where it's like could have gotten it but didn't. It's not like thermodynamics where it's like it's hopeless. Got like an A plus in thermodynamics too. I don't know what in the world happened there. I don't really know any. Don't ask me to do thermo for you. This was not Joke University either. And still giving me A's and this stuff. And I don't know deal with. Yeah. What happens a lot of those physics classes too is like sometimes like the class average on tests or in general is like less than 50%. So like you can get a lot of standard deviations above the mean, or like a tight standard deviation about around there, like a 5% standard deviation. So you can get like a 70% and get like this outlier high score and get an A and not know it very well. Because everyone else just knows it less, so much less. Oops, I accidentally switched the color of my pen using left click or right click, whatever it is. Yeah, if you can't really tell already, although it doesn't really manifest well in my speech. I'm a very feeble speaker and trip over my words a lot. There are certain ways in which I'm actually like really smart. Very poor at communicating it, right? Because I don't have that verbal intelligence. And the way my brain is put together and works doesn't really like resist me, say, sitting down and writing a paper. I tend to be very hyper. Um, and I'm very stimmy. I stim an awful lot. So yeah, I'm always feel like doesn't sit still, right? I like to be up and moving around a lot. So it's very hard for me to like actually be like productive in the real world and actually like get stuff done, despite me being smart. It's like by being smart is what like saves me from complete ruin. No, I've not been diagnosed with ADHD. And I philosophically kind of disagree with the idea of the diagnosis of ADHD, especially in more mild cases. Um, yeah, I'd have to put like a third layer on this because this line art's so dirty that you have to like reline art over the line art. You have to keep doing it until it was clean enough. It's a skill issue. It's I just don't have the skills. I just have like a body that can do it, right? Of course, I have like different artists, different kinds of artists for different people. If I have to make more of an impression, like if I just the way I tend to like nominally draw, if I don't have like a standard to meet and it's not for a specific application, it's kind of impressionistic, where it's kind of like photorealism, but it's only really looks realistic if you zoom out. That's kind of how I naturally do things. I just kind of that's how things are natural for me. Um, Doing like really clean cartoons is just the worst. Yeah, cartoons for me are the worst. I don't do like manga style or cartoon style, comic style very well at all because the lines have to be clean in the comics. I can do the shading part, but the shading has to go kind of like inside clean, already clean lines. I've given up at this point, basically. Have given up on the cleanliness of my lines. I guess the hair is going to go behind the ear on this side, so I'm going to have to draw an ear. Okay, it's going to have to be proportionate, though. This sketch is really bad. The sketch kind of assumed that there wouldn't be any ears, so it just kind of it put a vague ear shape and didn't actually like try to make it like correct. Eh. Huh. Or should I improv over top? Yeah, I'll improv over top.
make it kind of, the hair kind of go in. Come on, don't just keep making a bunch of little lines. Go make bigger lines. There we go. Oh, I see. I had it this one. Okay, well. Huh. Should I? Yeah, I'll redo that. Come on, move the pin more quickly. Quicker pin movements, please. Yeah, and then the improv here is I'm just going to connect this spur into it, like it'll cover up the ear, as opposed to what was originally sketched. Yeah, there we go. No, it's just a little bit like a ear maybe showing through like a window there. And then ignore this outward bulging going on. I don't know what in the world I was doing down here. Or what's with all these little lines? What's with that? Okay. No, it's easier if I go upwards. Oh, that's what happened last time. Okay. Man. Okay. Keep going. Keep drawing. Yeah, if you want to be really crude, you can try to clean up your line art with an eraser. It's kind of like get rid of some of the spurs and stuff. Not the best way to do it. Whoops. Okay, how's that? Is what it is. Oops. Wait a second, what? Did I draw all that on layer 2? Oh, got it. Really? Great. Now I have to transfer the entire classes onto another layer and completely erase them from this layer. Great. Ugh. And now I have to make this no longer... Okay, layer settings. Not draft a layer anymore. Great. So layer 3 has nothing on it, right? Great. Okay, layer 3. Paste it on there. Okay. Oh, okay, we don't need this one then. Okay. Didn't realize I did that. Delete layer. It doesn't ask me if I'm sure, that's dangerous. Okay, this one. Rename, can I rename it? Says draft. Okay. I'm on it, correct? Something like that. Okay, it does a sketch, I don't care. This one. Layer 2. Oh, okay. Okay, good. I have to redo this line art. Okay. Why was my previous pin color not black? What's going on here? Okay. Oh, okay, good. And then we can take this so we can 100% the opacity. There we go. That's what I want. Okay. Looks terrible. Okay. Ugh. Kind of weird how it works out where you go like, okay, is that the eyebrow or is that the like upper eyelash? And the answer is it's a cartoon. It's nothing. It's like smooshing them together into one average structure. Some people find blue eyes on like dark colored hair as uncanny. But unfortunately, I tend to gravitate towards it. man, it really reveals how bad the line art is when you do that. It just like reveals every flaw. Oof. It's so gross. Okay. Oh man. Uh, why does this naturally have just mirroring on as is? What's in layer 3? Okay, fine. I mean, the glasses should be mirror images, so it's like not the end of the world. I just was not expecting that. Okay. Nah, it probably should be bigger. So let's go 7. Of course, I don't have like the nose pads because this is a cartoon. I need to be like hyper realistic here. Wait, this is I'm doing this on top of the blue. Am I doing it on? No, I'm not. Okay, good. Okay, not the same layer. Good. Oops. Yeah, I messed up that. Maybe why you don't try to do all of that in one single stroke. Stop the stroke. So you don't lose so much when you spur. There you go. Anyway, something kind of roughly like that. We could type the sketch. No, that's the paper. I don't know. Which one's the... glasses? Okay, so layer 2. This is where we do this. Then we have an ear inside this somehow. Or whatever. The ear would be lower, so... because the top of the ear has to correspond to where the glasses would have their top of their ear position right here. So the ear would be down here. Anyway, I should never try to draw a cartoon again. Okay, whatever. This is silly. I'll stop recording and do something else.